Madam Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Leader of Opposition, and Honourable Members of the House, a very good afternoon to you. Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, and Nisambula. At the outset, Madam Speaker, I must applaud the Honourable Minister for Economy and his team for the formulation of a very well thought of and a very well conceived 2018-2019 national budget. Madam Speaker, it is interesting to note that some have called it a brave budget, some have called it a family budget, some have said it is an excellent and consistent budget, bold budget, and some have said it is a healthy budget, a credible budget, and a responsible budget. Our people have spoken nothing but the truth. I agree with them all. It was also interesting to note, Madam Speaker, the comments made by the Leader of Opposition, Honourable Kepa Espehekot in the Fiji Sun. I quote, "There are new initiatives put in place for Fijians to benefit from, which is great, wrote Hemumu Kepa," unquote. It's simply pleasing, Madam Speaker, and so welcoming to know that the majority of our Fijians have embraced the 2018-2019 budget. From a newborn to a senior citizen, from a student to a farmer, civil servants to business communities, no one is left behind. Madam Speaker, our Honourable Prime Minister, our leader and our mentor, has always advocated for an inclusive government, an educated Fiji, a healthy Fiji, an empowered Fiji, a united Fiji, building a strong and a better Fiji, a new Fiji. And Madam Speaker, this budget reflects and confirms the commitment by our Fiji First government. Madam Speaker, I sincerely wish to thank and congratulate our Honourable Prime Minister for leading a government that is passionate and considerate about its people before and above all else. And my contribution towards the allocations to the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation will substantiate just that. This budget, Madam Speaker, is a budget that is going to positively impact lives of all Fijians, especially those in the middle to lower income families. And I stand before this August House today to register my full support. Madam Speaker, I wish to also thank my Honourable Minister Vuniwanga for her tireless efforts in taking the Ministry for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation to new heights. She has been an instrumental leader interacting with world leaders and international organizations at the global platforms to supporting grassroots Fijians at the community levels. Watching Honourable Vuniwanga's passion for improving the status of living for disadvantaged Fijians is a marvel. And I wish to reinforce in this August House that it takes a woman to drive this kind of compassionate change for any nation. Madam Speaker, the completion of this fiscal year also marks the near completion of my role as the Assistant Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation. And I cannot express enough eye-openness in these 2 years, Madam Speaker. During the years, I have certainly understood in depth the real-life challenges of our disadvantaged populations. The Ministry being the custodians of the welfare of people living in poverty, elderly, people living with disabilities, women and children, has a very important responsibility. The responsibility to make life easier for the most vulnerable groups of people in our beloved nation. Madam Speaker, it gives great satisfaction to be of service to our people. I have witnessed tears of joy, happiness and smiles on the faces of people who were assisted through our ministry. Madam Speaker, very recently, when I delivered a wheelchair to one of our welfare recipients, I was deeply touched by her gesture of appreciation. She kept kissing my hands and blessed our government, our Prime Minister, our ministry for the care and compassion towards the less fortunate. Madam Speaker, this was just one incident out of many, and it goes without saying how much the assistance provided by our government through various schemes and programs are valued and appreciated by the disadvantaged. I wonder how this assistance will be classified as by the opposition camp. Madam Speaker, the allocation of $133 million towards our ministry for the fiscal year 2018-2019 sets the path that we as a ministry can walk on to improve our services and strengthen our partnerships to give the best possible programs we can to our people. Madam Speaker, poor people in poor areas want the same things that any other Fijian does. They want to have a decent livelihood. to meet their basic needs, to lead a fulfilled life, take good care of the children, and have a role in their community and in the society. In poor families, very little of this is possible without a growing economy. The Fijian government's record growth in the annual GDP and economic growth over the last 9 years is the first step in this direction. The second step is education, and this is the first Fijian government that has been able to make the education ministry a $1 billion ministry, which with its achievements will also fulfill the dream of our ministry to ensure that every Fijian child has an adequate education regardless of their parents' financial circumstances. This government has lifted the financial burden off the shoulders of poor parents, and every single one of us ought to be proud of this achievement. Madam Speaker, lately during the Sanatan Convention, I met many people who genuinely appreciated the budget and blessed our Prime Minister and our Fiji First government for making education possible for their children, and to top up their happiness, TELS loan repayment and other incentives given in this budget. They were happier students, senior citizens and young couples planning babies. They were simply enthralled at the idea that their newborn will have financial security. The $1,000 will help parents take better care of the newborn, and the child will already have a bank balance of at least $500 when he or she goes to school. This also is a great incentive to save and secure our child's future, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is an act of justice. It is not a handout. It is not a freebie. It is not a bribe. It is not vote buying as claimed by the opposition. It is the protection of a fundamental human right. The right to dignity and a decent life. The right to dignity and a decent life. If this pains the opposition, then I'm sorry to say these are not leaders for the people. They are insulting the recipients who take advantage of the various grants and assistance provided by my government. They are insulting people who took advantage of the farm care, transport care, and home care initiatives. So people are watching and listening. Madam Speaker, while poverty persists, there is no true freedom, which is why the Fijian government has been taking all possible measures to progress in the area of poverty reduction by supporting families living in destitute through social protection programs. All our social protection programs saw an increase in the last fiscal year. It was necessary, and from my personal interactions with the recipients, has been extremely helpful to them. It may mean nothing to a person who goes to bed on a full stomach each night and has money in their wallet on any given day, but it means a lot to a person who cannot afford to catch a taxi to the hospital when there is an emergency, or has to ask the neighbor for a small loan to put food on the table for their children. Madam Speaker, we are already in line with the globally required strategies to end poverty. In order to improve access to sustainable livelihoods, entrepreneurial opportunities and productive resources, we have in place our welfare graduation program, for which $500,000 has been allocated in order to move families who are currently dependent on social welfare assistance but have the potential to become self-reliant to engaging in entrepreneurial activities for income generation. This opportunity is also available for Fijian women under the approximately $1.2 million budget allocation to the Women's Plan of Action, whereby women's groups can request for funding assistance for their income-generating projects under the Formal Sector Employment and Livelihood Program. Madam Speaker, for the first time ever, and making this the 2018-2019 a sure-shot inclusive budget, is the allocation of $100,000 towards the Economic Empowerment of People with Disabilities Program, which is specifically for Fijians living with disabilities to engage in entrepreneurial activities using their skills and business sense to sustain themselves. Madam Speaker, we respect the fact that disability is not inability. Never before has any Fijian government recognized this to be a possibility, and having this program in place upholds this government's commitment to equal treatment and equal opportunities to all Fijians. To further assist the elderly and persons with disabilities, government will now fully fund bus fares for persons over 60 years of age who are currently under the bus fare scheme program. And the same will continue for persons living with disabilities. Madam Speaker, in aiming to progressively developing social protection systems to to support those who cannot support themselves, and to provide universal access to basic social services. Government has allocated social protection allowances for specific vulnerable segments of the Fijian population, including the social pension scheme for the elderly, the disability allowance for the disabled, and the care and protection allowance for the children. And in order to take the services to the doorstep of the rural Fijians, we are very happy to receive the $400,000 allocation towards the REACH project, which will further improve the pledge to increase accessibility. Madam Speaker, furthermore, in empowering people living in poverty and people of marginalized circumstances and their organizations, government has allocated $300,000 funds to women's organizations, $200,000 to Homes of Hope, $150,000 grants to girls' homes, $200,000 grants to voluntary organizations, an increased budget of $404,000 towards the National Council for Older Persons, and a $1 million operating grant to the Fiji National Council for Disabled Persons to strengthen their administration and operational capacities to better implement the vision of their organizations that complements the aims of our government. All these institutions are helpers of our ministry in looking after our clientele, and we acknowledge the fact that the ministry cannot work in isolation. We need the cooperation of these non-government organizations. An important government institution is the Poverty Monitoring Unit that acts as an advisor to government on the effectiveness of poverty alleviation programs of government, and has been given nearly $300,000 to carry out this significant role. Additionally, $580,970 has been allocated through secure land for the construction of a Western Disability Center that will serve the needs of persons living with disabilities in the Western Division by providing specialized services and support. Madam Speaker, in addressing the disproportionate impact of poverty on women, we continue to create an equitable environment for Fijian women, especially in terms of economic participation. With the allocation of the $500,000 budget for the National Women's Expo, we aim to take the event connecting Fijian women artisans to markets to greater heights. With the allocation towards the National Women's Machinery, we should also be able to support more women work out of poverty, access more services, access capacity building programs, and restart their lives on their own in case they have to come out of abusive relationships. The cases of violence against women in Fiji sit at staggering and shameful numbers, Madam Speaker, and most women decide to remain in abusive relationships and suffer domestic violence because of not having any financial means of survival, should they do so. I thank Honourable Minister Vuniwanga for lobbying for an allocation that will meet this need of survivors of domestic abuse and violence, for which we have been given $100,000 under the Domestic Violence Support Program. Madam Speaker, before I conclude, I kept on hearing Honourable Gavoka stood up and talked about R, why the money is in R. Honourable Leader of Opposition, why the money is in R. Honourable Kiliraki, why the money is in R. What's the problem if the money is in R? Regardless where the money is kept, regardless where the money is, if it's needed, it will be released. As simple as that. I mean, I hope there are no more R's coming from that side. Anyway, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, the 2018-2019 budget is an inclusive one that caters for the needs of people living in poverty, the elderly, people living with disabilities, women and children adequately. Our ministry has also been able to assist disaster victims in partnership with the Ministry of Economy for the Fijians affected by cyclones and floods over the past 2 years, where the ministry staff have served clients in affected areas, sometimes working till the next day, and that too with joy. Madam Speaker, when Honourable Pramod Chand said, "Oh, why do the government have to go to the grounds? Let the civil servants work." Or it is our ministry. If the minister is not there supporting our people on the ground, if I am not there supporting, then who will? He sometimes, Honourable Pramod Chand makes the craziest statements, I tell you, which holds no water. Don't know where the statement is going. Anyway, it was a pleasure serving our people through farm care, home care. It takes people of courage, Madam Speaker, and great passion to do this. And I wish to take this time to thank all staff of the ministry that complements the objectives of this government. We look forward to continuing to strive to give our people the best possible services to ensure they live a fulfilling life. I thank the government for the allocations for the new fiscal year. And thank you all for your love, support, and guidance. As you serve, Honorable Prime Minister, and all the members of both sides of the House. Thank you all. God bless Fiji. God bless Fiji first. Veena ka wakalifu.